What's up, everyone? Today I'm going to be talking about the Mistborn series. It is going to contain spoilers, so fair warning in advance, I'm already going to have that in the title, but just as a heads up, this is the first trilogy, or I guess the first series that I've read in a long time, really since like high school. Back in high school, I used to be a big reader, but recently, not so much. I got out of the habit of it. I actually used to, all the way back in high school, sometimes read in the hall. So that was kind of funny. So what got me started back reading again? I follow a YouTuber named Murphy, and I talked about her briefly in one of my other videos, I believe. But just listening to the way that she talks every week, she does weekly vlogs about what she's reading, about different books that she even also hasn't finished, and things along those lines. Just hearing the passion of her talk about reading again really got me excited to read again. And the first series that I picked up was the Mistborn Trilogy, and that was one of the fantasy genres that she recommended. I'm personally a big fantasy sci-fi person, so I was excited to try something new because I always find with my reading that I like a series and I'll read it over and over. So for me, it was kind of a push out of the comfort zone. One, to read again, and two, to start a new series that I've never read before or really know anything about. I guess one of my friends had read it all the way back in high school and had told me about it, but I think I just ignored him or something. Yeah, so getting started. The first book I read in like 2 days, which is really good for me because it's like 700 something pages, and I haven't been reading in forever, so the pace that I read at is significantly slower than it used to be. So getting into the different characters and the things that happened in that first book. So we're introduced to Vin right as she's part of an old thieving crew, and Kelsier takes notice of her because of her powers. Marsh actually is the first one to notice her, that she can use allomancy. And it's due to that Kelsier then takes notice of her and recruits her into his thieving crew. And he actually saves her from one of the Inquisitors. And then from there, you get introduced to all the different members that are part of the thieving crew. So I'm going to try to see if I can remember them all. There's Sazed, there's Ham, there's Breeze, there's Spook. There's always the grumpy guy that I forget. I don't know why I forget his name, but he's the grumpy old soldier. There's Kelsier. It's Spook's uncle, and he saves Spook later on. In the third book, Spook tells about why, or like how he got saved and joined Kelsier's crew. And the guy was a master woodcrafter. I don't know why I can't remember his name. I'm going to pull it up real quick. Oh, I also forgot Dachshund. I forgot Orser. Oh, Clubs. I live in an apartment where the blinds are really terrible and they fall down all the time. Alright, so those are the members of the crew. And the ones I would say that I attached the most to right off the bat, obviously, were Ham, because he just has a very high likability. He clicks with all the soldiers that he's around, he bonds with them. There's Kelsier, who's just very naturally charismatic and very competent and knows what he's doing. It's his leadership that gets everybody that normally might not have worked together to work together towards this mission of taking down the Lord Ruler. And then I didn't so much like Breezed in the beginning, or Breezed, I'm mixing up Breeze and Sazed. I didn't so much like Breeze at the beginning of the series because he seemed like not somebody I would get along with personally. And then in the first book, Spook was really hard to like, I guess, because he always had that really thick Eastern accent, which while reading it, it was really strange and hard to understand exactly what he was saying, but it was funny the ways that they would mock some of the characters, because some of them could understand it and some of them couldn't. And then, yeah, so really Vin, Doxson, Kelsier, and Kelsier, Doxson, and Vin were the main characters that I liked at the beginning of the series. So, as the series progresses, Kelsier teaches Vin how to use her allomancy. It's shown that she's Mistborn. So in this series, you're either a Misting, which means you have one of the allomantic powers, or you're a Mistborn, which means that you have them all. And Vin is shown to be Mistborn, and not only that, she's extra strong as a Mistborn, and it's through the two of them working together that eventually the Lord Ruler gets taken down in the first book. Something that Brandon Sanderson does that Frank Herbert also does in the Dune books is at the beginning of every chapter, he puts some sort of excerpt about something that happens. So in the case of the first book, and actually through most of the books, it's told through this storyline of the Lord Ruler. It's told through the story of this character named Alendi and Rashek, and how Rashek comes to betray Alendi and then take the power of the Well of Eternity for himself. So it's all very fascinating. Just contained in the first story, you just slowly piece together that maybe the Lord Ruler wasn't that Alendi character, and then eventually you do figure out that it was indeed Rashek. He betrays Alendi and takes the power for himself. And as the characters go through, you have Kelsier, who sets himself up to be a martyr, and when he dies in like a masterful fight against one of the Inquisitors, where he's using allomancy basically to its fullest, where he's just throwing metal back and forth all around the sky and just shooting it through the Inquisitor, and I believe he beheads him, but I don't remember offhand. I know it's shown later on that the ways that you can kill them are to remove their spikes or to behead them to separate their head. Why am I explaining what beheading is? But those are the ways to take out an Inquisitor. And then after that, Kelsier always talked about the 11th metal, which is interesting in that the 11th metal only really has a purpose in the first book. I think it's called Maladium. And what it does is when the Allomancer uses it, it lets them see into other people's past. A really big component of these books is a metal called Atium. Atium, when ingested, it's only harvested in a place called the Pits of Hatson. And when ingested, it allows an Allomancer to see into the future. So if there were arrows flying at you, you would see them coming and be able to move in advance. And not only does it let you see into the future, but it also speeds up how your brain perceives things and allows you to react to them well in advance. The only ways that it's shown in the first book to be countered is if you're fighting somebody else who has Adium. And I really hope I'm pronouncing that name right, because it's been about a week since I finished those books. But if two people are fighting that have ingested Adium and are burning it, then they see many shadows of each other, and so it kind of nullifies it. So rather than just seeing what's going to happen in the future, they start seeing all the different possibilities of things that could happen in the future as to like how they would fight one another. So in the first book, they use that Maladium to fight the Lord Ruler. It's shown that he's not really Alendi, he's Rashek, and through the use of that metal and being able to see into the past, and also the use of Vin ingesting the mist into herself, she's able to power up strong enough that she can take down the Lord Ruler, who is a mixture of He is an Allomancer, and he is also a... What is the name? He's a mixture of an Allomancer and a Feruchemist. And so before I go into the other two books, there's 3 types of magic sources. There's Feruchemy, Allomancy, and Hemalurgy or something. Hemalurgy, I think it is. So Allomancy, you ingest certain metals, and based on the metal that you ingest, you burn it inside yourself, and each of those gives you different powers. Like burning pewter makes you really strong, burning steel there's steel and one other metal that when you burn them, you're allowed to push and pull metals. All the powers are really based off of this push and pull, whether it be a physical phenomenon or it be like an emotional phenomenon. And then a Feruchemist can then take those metals and he infuses from his own body, his or her own body, into the metal and imbues the metal with power that they can then draw on later. And then the last power is Hemalurgy, where you take a spike, and this is where the Inquisitors get their power. You take a spike and you stab it through the person that you're giving the power to and kill the person underneath with the spike. And it transfers the majority of the power of the person that you kill into the person that you stab the spike through. So what's really weird is like the Inquisitors, they have spikes sticking out of their eyes. So that would mean that somebody had rammed a spike through their head, through their eyeballs, and killed someone underneath through it, and then they lived, even though there's a spike sticking all the way through their brain. So that's some like David Blaine stuff right there. Very interesting. So yeah, those are the 3 different powers. It's shown that there are 2 gods. There's preservation and ruin, and these really are emphasized in the 3rd book. I'm just touching on them now to explain these powers. So preservation it was given from... Allomancy was given from preservation. Hemalurgy was given from ruin, and then Feruchemy is like the neutral version, where nothing is created or destroyed, it's just conserved. Maybe that's preservation. I forget how it works exactly. But yeah, each of the powers corresponds to like a god, or I guess one of them does. Preservation conserves, so I think that would be Feruchemy. Hemalurgy destroys, which would be ruin. And then I think the last one, Allomancy, would just be like straight up power. I don't really know how that works. Creation, the power of creation. Yeah, so at the end of the 1st book, though, they kill the Lord Ruler. He's basically like, you don't know what you've unleashed on the world by killing me, and he dies. And so when he dies, he sets ruin upon the world. He was basically holding ruin back. Ruin is like the dark god that's trying to destroy the world. It's not really evil, but that's just the nature of the god and what it is. So ruin is just ruin. It's just trying to destroy everything. Preservation is trying to conserve everything. Those are the 2 push-pull forces in the world. The way the world came about in the Mistborn Trilogy is, or the way that people came about is, preservation and ruin combine their power to create a people that over time, or preservation convinced ruin to make this people. But in doing so, in the deal, it was made that ruin would get to destroy those people. So push-pull, they create it, but through the power of them together, they create it, but separated, preservation tries to conserve the people, in the world, and Ruin tries to destroy it. It was made a deal that Ruin could destroy the world. Sorry, this is a long explanation for this, but that's how it is. So Ruin gets set upon the world because the Lord Ruler dies, and the whole second book is called The Well of Ascension, and the idea is that you come to find out that Ruin, over time, is he's causing Vin to have this feeling to be pushed towards going to the Well of Ascension and thinking that she's the hero of ages. So she has a compulsion to go there, and through the storyline of the second book, it's all about being under siege, and there's all these armies that are attacking the city, and it's up to Vin's then husband, Elend, to basically create a new world, no longer under the Lord Ruler, and to make a new society where all the Ska can be saved. And I didn't talk about it in the first part, but the Ska are a race of people that are normally subjugated. They don't have as many rights as the other people in the world. There's the Terrace, there's the Ska, there's the Noblemen, there's what else do we have? Okay, sorry. So there's the Ska, Nobles, Terracemen, Inquisitors, Colossus, Khandra, Mistwraith, and there's the Southern Scadrians? Okay. So basically the main ones are the Khandra, the Colossus, and then the human races. So the nobles were favored by the Lord Ruler, and basically it's through him that they were given the power to become Mistborn. And then the Ska are not favored. They're basically just the working force of the kingdom. And the Terracemen are like the favored servants. The Lord Ruler used to be a Terraceman, and so he tries to breed Ferochemi out of their race. They're the only ones that have the ability. He tries to breed it out of their race so no one can be born with Allomancy and Ferochemi to be like him and rise up and take control of the kingdom. And those are kind of the races. So throughout the second book, Elend is trying to rule the kingdom and then make a society where all those people can be free. And then, like in his ruling kingdom, in the main city, I forget the name of it right now, I'm drawing blanks, this is a lot of details. Luthafel, I think it is. He tries to make a a leading force of him and the nobles, the Ska, and then all the tradesmen, the market people, like the head market people. And that's like the leading force of the city. So rather than just the king leading, it's this big task force of all the city. Eventually, it comes to be that Elend's brother Zane, who is being controlled by Ruin, is trying to convince Vin to leave this whole fight that's going on and to pursue the Well of Ascension, or to basically free him. He feels like she's the only one that understands him. But he is being heavily controlled by Ruin to manipulate her to do whatever Ruin wants. And then eventually she ends up... she has this big conflict in the second book about whether or not she loves Elend enough to stay with him, or if she should be with someone more like her, another Mistborn. And that's kind of like a big plot line in the second book. In the end, she ends up choosing Elend, and then Zane ends up trying to kill her in that moment. She also finds out that her Khandra, Orsur, was killed by Tensoon. Her Khandra was killed by Tensoon, who is not... Khandra are not allowed to kill humans, but they can kill each other It's not against their contract. Their contract was like their binding agreement to the Lord Ruler, to prevent all the Allomancers from controlling them. There's a whole bunch of details. The series is very dense, basically. But she ends up, through the relationship she develops with Tensoon, even though Tensoon killed her Kandra, Orsur, through that relationship, Tensoon goes against his contract, which no Kandra do, and ends up helping her in killing Zane. And that's a whole series of events. Zane dies, and then Vin goes to the north thinking that the Well of Ascension is there, but as she goes there, there's like this thumping that she always hears. It fades more and more. And the whole time, too, she's seeing a Mist Wraith. The Mist Wraith is following her. It follows her into Ellen. Ellen comes with her to the north. They both realize that the Well of Ascension is right where they were in Luthadel, right under the city. So they go back. They go down into the Well of Ascension. This whole time, you find out that the Inquisitors had killed all the Keepers, which were the leaders of the Terrace people. Then the head Inquisitor, which turns out to be Marsh, who is slowly more and more controlled over time, loses more and more of his free will. He goes back and tries to kill Sazed, who's the only Terrace that realizes that Vin shouldn't take the power of the Well of Ascension, or shouldn't give it up, or that he's being manipulated, because the Mist Wraith convinces Sazed that he's being manipulated. Vin gets back to the Well of Ascension. She takes the power. In doing so, when she takes it, the Mist Wraith stabs Elend, and he's going to die 100%. The reason that the Mist Wraith stabs Ellen is to try to convince Vin to use the power from the well to save Ellen and let him live, which she realizes that's not what Ellen would want. So she ends up giving up the power, that's been the legend the whole time through manipulation of Ruin, is that if you give up the power of the Well of Ascension, then the world will be saved. It'll go out into the world and like get rid of the deepness, which is what everyone refers to as the mist. So she gives up the power. Ellen's about to die. The Mist Wraith, in one final act, there has him ingest this metal that's around the Well of Eternity, which is really just a chunk of the Well of Eternity in a ball form. Just a little bit of the power. He ingests it and turns into like this full-blown, super-powered Allomancer. And then that's the end of the second one. And then in the third book, they're trying to go around. They find all these caches that the Lord Ruler left behind with a bunch of food that allows the people to try to survive calamity, basically. Because when Vin lets go of the Well of Ascension, she allows Ruin to unleash most of its power upon the world. It's still missing one thing, which is its body, which its body turns out to be Atium. So all that ore that they had been mining at the pit of Hatson was really a god's body. So every time they ingested Atium, they're burning the power of a god's body. So the third book, they're going around gathering all the caches. Spook goes to the north. Vin and Ellen go to the west. And the whole time, Ruin is trying to get everyone to kill everyone, and it's working for the most part. There's a big clash between not an Inquisitor, but an Obligator, which is one of the Lord Ruler's old religious, like, head religion people, who still believes in everything the Lord Ruler did. And then, so there's a big conflict between them. The Lord Ruler's pushing and pulling them, trying to get them to kill each other. Ruin shows up to Vin and tells her that he's been manipulating her whole life, and that the voice of her brother, who used to beat her all the time, the voice of her brother in her head was really him most of the time, not all the time. And he was also the one who got her mom. Okay, her past is that her mom killed her sister, who had one of the allomancy powers that allowed you to detect other Allomancers. Vin was already a Mistborn at the time. When the mom killed the daughter, she did it with one of the spikes that could give powers to somebody else. And that's what Vin's earring ended up becoming. And then when she did that, because she's wearing the metal, she couldn't ingest the mist. The mist is preservation, but the spike enhanced her ability to sense Allomancers, which let her see through copper clouds, which are normally used to shroud Allomancers. I'm going off on huge tangents. Basically, I'm describing the storylines. So then, that's all revealed in the third book. Vin's having like this showdown with Ruin. She takes off from the city, making him think that she knew where the Atium is. And Ruin has all the Inquisitors, like 13 or 14 of them, go after Vin, and they fight in Luthadel in like a one big final showdown, because Vin feels like the only way that she has ever used the mist before, like ingesting it into herself and powering herself up like a whole bunch, was when she was in mortal danger. That wasn't the case. It was whenever she wasn't wearing her earring, which was a power of Ruin. When she wasn't wearing that, she was allowed to ingest the mist. So when she gets to Luthadel, she's fighting. She's killed a couple of the Inquisitors, and then Marsh is like totally mind controlled by Ruin. He's breaking every bone in her body. She's just screaming out in agony, and in like one last push of his own free will, he rips her earring out. When he does that, she's able to ingest all the mist in the entire world, and it basically ascends her to godhood. She takes out all the Inquisitors except for Marsh. And then she transcends into godhood, and then her body disappears. So she really has no influence in the world anymore. And it's her and Ruin just overlooking everything. And anytime one of them tries to do something, the other blocks each other. And that was the big push-pull, is preservation and Ruin always are going to stop each other from doing what they want. So it's also revealed in that book, the mist is killing a bunch of people. What it's really doing is trying to give them power of allomancy, which only ever happens under lots and lots of stress on the body, enough to normally kill someone or come really close to killing someone. That's the only way the power activates. So that's what the mist had been doing, and specifically the mist had been doing it to activate the power to burn atium in the population. So when they find out where the storehouse of that is, everybody's sheltered down there, and then the allomancers that can burn atium go up to the surface, and they all ingest and keep ingesting it over and over and burning it, which is Ruin's body. They keep burning it inside themselves to fight all of the Colossus. Why am I spacing out on the names? So they go to fight all the Colossus. They can see everything they're doing. So it's like 200 people that are just annihilating thousands of Colossus because they're just dodging everything until they start running out of the atium. And then they start just dying. They just keep dying at that point. So then they try to retreat. They retreat as much as they can. Ellen ends up running out of his medals, but then Vin blesses him with the medals enough to keep fighting Marsh. Ellen ends up dying, and there's a final showdown between when Ellen dies, Vin says that she has nothing to live for, so she throws all of her power against Ruin to kill him and defeat him. And then she does, but in killing Ruin, she kills herself because their powers were so equal. They were only equal, though, because the allomancers had burned all the atium, so he couldn't get his full body. They die. Their bodies manifest in the real world and fall down. And when they die, Sazed, who you follow his journey the whole time as he's like losing faith throughout the story. And at the end, he finally chooses to believe again, and then comes to a realization that he was actually the person that was supposed to be the hero of ages. And he sees the power of ruin and of Vin, ruin and preservation, leaving the bodies of Vin and ruin. And in like his last moments of life, he goes up to the two powers and holds them with his different copper mines on his body, holding like the wealth of the knowledge of every religion that had ever existed or that they ever had memory of. And he uses the powers of preservation and ruin together, which form power of creation, plus the copper mines, which had all the knowledge from before, to reshape the world and place it back in position of where it's supposed to be. And that's really the end of the story. It was very unexpected, I think, because throughout the whole story, it is heavily teased that Vin is the hero of ages. But even though she kills Ruin, it doesn't stop like the end of the world happening. Basically, the Colossal just start killing all their people, and then now they don't have like a hive mind leader. Now they're just stuck in these caverns with all the people, and they have no leadership or direction, and they're all in like a blood craze trying to kill them anyways. I think the biggest plotline that I really loved in the third book too was the storyline of the Khandra, and of how Tensoon grew to believe that Vin was like the mother of the Khandra now, and that they needed to devote all their power and resources to her. In the big way Ruin was able to control the Colossus and the Inquisitors was through the hemalurgic spikes. And through those spikes, because they were of a power of ruin, he grew influence on them. So the way he would control people throughout the world is he would spike them. So when he spiked them, he gained, even if it wasn't total control over someone based on like their willpower, he gained influence over them and was able to over time shape their decisions. The Khandra, because they had less spikes than the Colossus and the Inquisitors, Ruin number one believed they weren't a very powerful race, and number two didn't have as much control over them because they didn't have many of those spikes or blessings, the Khandra called them. So at the end though, it's revealed that the Khandra had all of the Atium stored where they lived, and in the contract that they all worship, it was a rule or a promise that the Lord Ruler made them give to him, is that when the time comes, he would tell them all to remove the blessings. The blessings were what turned them from Mist Wraith to Khandra and gave them sentience. So it's kind of tragic because they all come to understand that the world really is ending. They all lived in their cave in ignorance and were enjoying like their own peaceful life. And they all remove their spikes. They all die, except for like the bad ones that Ruin had control over. And then, yeah, that was his way. That was the Lord Ruler and the Khandra's way of saving their people, because they knew that even though they had life given to them by the spikes, they knew that Ruin would eventually be able to control them. And so that was like their ultimate sacrifice. Was they were like the ultimate spies that could use the power of Ruin. So they lived in a cave underground. Ruin wouldn't notice them because of the cave being surrounded by metal. So preservation and Ruin couldn't see anything that was surrounded by metal. So yeah, that's really it. I mostly did like a synopsis, I guess, of the trilogy, but I really, really enjoyed it. It was super good, fascinating read. I'm really happy I did read it because I haven't read anything in a while, and to come back and read a series that I was so engrossed in, and it had been a while since I've read anything where like I come back home and I have all these things like video games and archery and fishing and movies and videos. It'd been a while since anything book-wise had distracted me enough to make me put down those things and just keep getting my book out day after day and read them. And I actually love it so much that I lent my whole series to one of my students, and she's been flying through it too. She's really been liking it. So on a rating scale, I highly recommend the Mistborn series. I actually liked Brandon Sanderson's writing so much that I have now just started on this beefy series right here, Stormlight Archives. So I'm in for, I think, quite another large, good, quality adventure. This one I'm not going to be able to go through as quickly, though, just due to the sole fact that I'm starting university classes in 2 weeks. But I do highly look forward to tackling that series. So I hope you guys enjoyed my book synopsis / review. Review being, I give it 9.5, 10 out of 10. It was excellent. Highly recommend, and I hope you guys come back for my next book review if I do one. Yeah. Take care, everyone. Have an awesome day.